Hello, my name is Arina Rivov. Welcome to my channel.
In this video, I will show my favorite way of doing an Italian cast-on for a simple rib consisting of 2 knit and 2 purl stitches and also a jogless connection in a circle. This is how I hold the yarn for casting on. The index finger goes under the working yarn, and the thumb goes under the tail of yarn. I'm casting on my first stitch by twisting the yarn around the needle, like this. And now I'm going to cast my first knit stitch under the tail of yarn, over the working yarn, and this is my first knit stitch, and over the working yarn and under the tail, a purl stitch, and I will repeat under the tail, over the working yarn, another knit stitch, over the working yarn and under the tail, a purl stitch. For this particular rib, you need to cast on a number of stitches that can be divided by 4, because the design is 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches, so it's 4 stitches that we repeat. So it has to be a division of 4. So here I'm finishing casting on, and my last stitch is a knit stitch. I'm turning my needle clockwise, holding the last 2 stitches firmly so that the cast on row will be secure, it will not unravel. So I keep pressing with my left hand index finger the first 2 stitches. I will secure the yarn tail with my finger on my right hand, and I will slip the first stitch as a purl stitch, inserting my needle from right to left, like this. And right away I will knit my first knit stitch, also from right to left. And now my cast on row is secured, so I can release the yarn tail. In the first row, all the purl stitches are purled the usual way, inserting the needle from right to left, and all the knit stitches are worked by also inserting the right needle tip from right to left, because in the cast on row the knit stitches are turned, so to avoid twisting them, we insert the needle from right to left, like this. So far it's a simple rib, 1 knit and 1 purl stitch. We're going to transfer it into the rib, 2 knit and 2 purl stitches in the next row when we connect in a circle. Here I will show you how I work the last stitches in the row. This is a knit stitch, a purl stitch, and the very last stitch is also a knit stitch, and I'm going to work it differently. I will insert my right needle tip from left to right, because it will create a sharper, straighter corner. So we are done with the first row after the cast on row, and so far it's a rib, 1 knit and 1 purl stitch. I need to distribute all my stitches along my circular needle so they all look in the same direction, because I have to avoid twisting my work. So just when you do that, just take your time. It's very important that all the stitches look in the same direction, because you will not be able to undo this later on. And here, this is my yarn tail, and here I'm showing how the stitches look on the needle. The cast on row looks towards the center of the circle. Now I'm going to connect in a circle, and also I will start changing my rib into a combination of alternating 2 knit and 2 purl stitches. So if you look closely, the first stitch is a purl stitch, and then here, and then the next one is a knit stitch, and then again purl stitch, knit stitch, and so on. And we're going to change that in a moment. So I'm just tightening a little bit the yarn tail. It's more convenient this way. And since the first stitch is a purl one, I'm purling it in a regular way and just tighten a bit here to avoid a gap. And the next stitch is a knit one, and we're knitting it as a knit stitch, just the regular knit stitch. And now we need to exchange the positions of the 2 following stitches, because we need to have 2 knit stitches and 2 purl stitches. And I'll first show you one of the ways how we can do that. You can just slip the purl stitch on a tool, such as this tapestry needle, for example. Work the knit stitch, and then return the purl stitch on the left needle. And purl it. And I will purl the following stitch and knit the stitch after that. And now you can see that we have 2 knit stitches followed by 2 purl stitches. But that's a very cumbersome way for me, so I'll show you how I actually prefer to do this. So we need this knit stitch to be close to the knit stitch on the right needle. I insert the right needle tip from left to right into both knit and purl stitches, slip them off, return the purl stitch back on the left needle, and knit the knit stitch, and then purl the purl stitch. and this is the regular purl stitch. And then regular knit stitch. And again here we need to exchange the positions of these two stitches. Again the right needle from left to right, return the purl stitch back on the left needle, and finish the knit stitch knitwise. And purl the purl stitch. Again regular purl stitch, so we have again 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, 2 knit stitches, 2 purl stitches, and now again we need to have 2 knit stitches. So we need the first one as a regular knit stitch, and these two we exchange the positions, so the needle goes from left to right. Return the purl stitch onto the left needle tip and finish the knit stitch and purl the purl stitch. Regular purl stitch after that, regular knit stitch, exchange the positions of these two stitches, slip them off, return the purl stitch, knit the knit stitch, a purl stitch, the regular purl stitch, the regular knit stitch, here I'm getting close to the connection area, and I'll show you how to work the last stitches. It's pretty much the same, but you might want to see this. Again a knit stitch, and then these two stitches we exchange their positions. Again the needle goes left to right, slipping them off, the purl stitch goes back on the left needle, we finish knitting the knit stitch, and then we have our last purl stitch in the row, and this is our first purl stitch of the row, so we're also purling it. This purl stitch is going to be the beginning of the row. This is how it looks when we switched the positions of the stitches, and now we have 2 knit and 2 purl stitches alternating. To continue knitting, I usually prefer to change the size of my needles, because for the cast on row and a couple of rows after, I like to use a smaller needle size, so it prevents the edge from flaring. I'm taking a needle one size up, and I'm keeping my left needle tip the same size. It's actually easier to knit when the left needle tip is of a smaller diameter. I usually use this trick when I knit in the round sweaters, top-down sweaters, sleeves, hats. I'll continue knitting with a needle of a larger size, and now it's a 2 knit and 2 purl stitch rib. So I finished 2 rows with a needle of a larger size, and including the cast on row, I have now 5 rows altogether. And again, I'm going to change my right needle tip into a bigger size. It's a good idea to change the size of your needle into a bigger size, especially if you make a trim for a sweater. If you just need a trim for a hat, you can just change one time after the first 2 rows. But for a sweater, we want our trim to be more sort of flattened versus turtleneck. By changing the needle size, it helps to increase the diameter of the circle, and it looks better when you wear the sweater. The trim lays more flat around the neck. I will knit 4 rows using this needle size, and then I will change again into a bigger size and knit 4 more rows. I finished knitting my sample. And I would like to show you my method of how I eliminate the jog. I'm threading the yarn tail on the tapestry needle. And if you look closely, to the right of the yarn tail, there is a half a knit stitch. And I insert my needle back to front into that half stitch and pull my yarn through. And just very lightly tighten. And now I flip it to another side. And here again we have a half stitch to the right of the yarn tail. This is it. And I'm inserting my needle front to back into that half stitch and right away back to front into the next knit stitch. And pull my yarn through. And tighten a little bit, not too much, but just enough to make it look good. And there we go. We have our jogless connection.